So g'day and welcome to Science Week, episode 1. We're going to have 5 science projects for you to do at home this week that you can follow along, hopefully learn a little bit along the way. We're all in lockdown, we know that, so we're going to try and make it as entertaining as possible. To the mums and dads out there, hopefully this will give you a little bit of relief, to give you a bit of time off. Mind you, we're going to be using flour, water, oil and milk. I'm sure we're going to be just making more and more mess for you. So today we're going to be making Brad's Hungry Fungi bread rolls. So we can learn a little bit about what happens when we're making bread. The best thing about this is you also get to eat the final product. That is something that obviously I'm looking forward to. So as we go along, the first thing I'm going to say to everybody out there, please be careful. We're going to be using an oven. So before you use the oven, make sure mum and dad are all good with it, that you've got someone there to supervise you so you can be safe as you do that. But the oven's not going on for a little while. So at the moment, we're just going to be using the fun stuff. Now, I'm going to be following my recipe, even though I used to be a baker. You can never be too sure in case you make a mistake along the way. So the first thing you're going to need to do is you need a bowl. And I'll make sure you've got your ingredients first. You need a bowl. Okay, that's going to be to mix in. You need 450 grams of flour. You need 300 mils of water. You need that water as lukewarm water. It works with the yeast when it goes later on. You'll need 7 grams of yeast or 2 teaspoons of yeast. You'll need a teaspoon of salt. You'll need some oil. I'm using olive oil today. Now the oil says we need, and I'll have to double check that, 2 tablespoons of oil. It's about right. I use the olive oil instead of vegetable oil. You can use whatever oil you like. We need some milk. We're going to need a container to put it in to prove later on. And we also need a tray so we can cook it up. That's one of the most important parts. Now, first things first. If we get our salt, put it straight in with our flour. Once you've got those two mixed together, just using a sieve, we're going to use little bits at a time, and you sieve that straight through, just so we can get a really good response and really good, nice, smooth bread. You don't want too many clumps in it when we do it, so just sieve that through there. So this will be all of your 450 grams of flour and your salt in this mixture, and it's nice and basic. Here we go, we'll just chuck all that in there. As I said, the best part about this is you'll get to have eat your science project, which is fantastic. Some people out there may be gluten-free. They'll have to use different flour than what we're using. Or if you like wholemeal bread or grain bread, you'll have to use a wholemeal flour, which can be bought just the same as this. But I'm using just a bread flour, straight from the supermarket. Everything is nice and easy to buy. So once you've sieved all that in, you can get all the lumps out of that. Make sure it goes through. Now I've used a little bit coarser salt. So I'm going to actually just mix the salt straight back in there and put that aside. Don't forget at the end of this, yes, we have to clean up everything. We can't just leave it as it is because it'll get us in trouble. Once you've got it in your bowl, just make a nice little well, just right in the middle there. Now, if we get our water and our oil, and if we mix our 2 tablespoons of oil straight into the water, and you'll see automatically that just separates. Almost no matter what you do, that's going to stay separated, but don't worry about that. Once we get it into the flour, it'll be fine. Put the lid back on over there, and we pour this straight into the middle here. Just pour it all in. It's got the oil and everything. And once we've done that, we start to mix it through. Okay, once we're just starting to mix it, if we just get our yeast, okay, grab the yeast and just sprinkle the yeast in. Now the yeast is the part that's going to make the bread. Yeast is, although it looks like it's just another thing like flour, it's actually a living organism. So what the yeast will do is it effectively mixes with the flour, it takes the salt in and it creates gases. Now, for those that have worked that out, that means that the yeast is taking up all the salt, just like we eat, and it farts. And that creates the gas, which will be used later on to grow the dough. So then before we bake it, we can actually turn it into rolls. And you can see it starting to turn into a nice dough as we just mix it through there. Okay, once it starts to turn into a nice soft dough, and you feel like you can't do much more with your wooden spoon, some of you might have already put your hands in there now, that's no dramas at all. We're going to need just a little bit more flour. Should have brought that out. So we get a little bit of flour here, and what we do, just put that on the bench top. Make sure your bench top's nice and clean. When you put that down there, then you can get your dough and you just flip it over and you put it straight on top of it there. And this is where all of the work's done. So this is when we're going to turn the dough, effectively getting it ready so it can start growing in the cupboard there. And once it starts growing, that's when the yeast is starting to work. So we knead it. So effectively you can push it down with your knuckles, make sure you've got enough flour, even maybe if you need, put a little bit of flour on your hands, stops it sticking, push it down, all you do is you roll it up, better move that out of the way, roll it up and push it away from you. Now this is what we call kneading. This not only combines all the ingredients, but it actually heats it up as well. You may need a little bit more flour as you go, you'll find it, as you're traveling along, you'll start to find it gets a bit more sticky. If it's getting sticky, just use a bit more flour. Okay, once the dough gets to a position that's really nice and elastic, and you can start to feel it, you'll see you can start to put it into a ball. Once you get it into that ball, just using two hands and going around, doesn't have to be perfect this one, get a container, make sure you've sprayed the inside of that container with oil or it will stick. Put that in the middle of the bottom there, just grab out of the drawer some cling wrap or any plastic, put that over the top, seal it up. And once you've got that sealed, all you've got to do is put it in the cupboard, leave it there for about an hour and a half, it'll double in size, and at the end of that, we'll bring it back out and it gives us a chance then to turn it into rolls. But in between while it's in there, great chance to clean up the mess you've already made and get ready for the next lot. Okay, so it's been around about 90 minutes, so we're going to go and check on our dough to see how it's going. So we would have kept it in the cupboard. We'll bring that out. You're aiming for it to be about double the size. You want to make sure that yeast has worked really well, of which it has, and then it's quite simple. We've got our tray, which is already oiled. Just a quick sprinkle of flour again on the bench, because we're going to lay our dough out again, and then hopefully, because we've oiled it properly, it all comes out nice and easy. We're going to knock the wind out of it effectively. So we lay it down, fold it over, just do it just quickly, not too hard, but just to get the dough out of it, to get the air out of it, which has been making it while it's been sitting in there. Now, if we get it into a nice even shape, just be careful now because you're going to be using a knife, and of course I haven't got mine there. Get yourself a chopping block and a knife, and then you can grab your milk again because you're going to need your milk for what we're doing just in a second. So, what we do is we get the dough. We've now got to make about 12 separate pieces of this dough, about the same size. So the way I like to do it, just put a nice line through the middle and then do it roughly the same down there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines should make about 6 rolls. And then we'll cut right through. So they should be about the same size. Some might be a little bit bigger. When you get them, move your flour aside and roll them into a ball. Bit too much flour there. Okay. Mine aren't too even, as you can see, but that's all right. Once you've made your 12 balls, ready for the rolls, what we do is we then turn the oven on to 220 degrees. Again, you'll probably need mum and dad for this part to make sure you get it all right. We're going to make sure we use mitts as well. Now, we're not putting them in the oven yet, but we've got to give the oven plenty of time to warm up because we want it nice and hot when we put it in there. Once we've rolled these up, we just put them back in the cupboard. Don't cover them, leave them uncovered and leave them in there for around about 20 minutes, just to let that yeast do a little bit more work and let them grow just that fraction more. And then, after that, we cut the top of them, give a little cross on top of them, put a tiny bit of milk on it, just brush the milk on, and then they're ready for the oven at 220 degrees. And when they're in the oven, we'll put them in there for I'll put the time up there on the on there for you. Okay, you can see how the rolls have turned out. They're ready to go in the oven. So all we're going to do now is just brush a little bit of milk on the top of each one, which won't take long at all. That just gives it that bit of moisture so the yeast can work and it can still cook and bake in the oven. We don't cook. I'd get in trouble from my daughter for that, who tried not to laugh in the background just then when I said that. And we cut. You can cut a cross or a line, that's up to you. I like to do just lines on them. Just be careful if you've got a sharp knife, so make sure you're using mum and dad around again. I don't want to get in trouble for anyone having baked fingers. That was a good one, hey Chloe. And then on the top of your rolls, you can put whatever you like within reason, but I'm going to use some sesame seeds on some of them, so we've got half of them just with sesame seeds. Just sprinkle them on. And then straight into the oven, and we'll put them in the oven at 220 degrees. On fan force. Bob's your uncle, we'll see them shortly. Hey Alexa, stop. That means our rolls are ready to go. So we're going to take them out of the oven. Don't forget, oven mitts. Make sure you've got mum and dad here for this bit. It could be very, very hot. We're just hoping they look good. Here they come. Alexa, stop. Sometimes she just doesn't listen, that one. Get your bread rolls out. Look at that, they just look magnificent. Now, you can put them straight on a cooling tray. That'll let them cool down a little bit quicker. Now, I wouldn't suggest straight away eating them. Leave them for a few minutes. Once they're a few minutes done, they'll cool down. Here's one I've cooled down a little bit earlier. Open it up, just whilst it's a little bit warm. A little bit of butter in it. You can't go better than a nice warm roll with a little bit of butter. And this is your science experiment totally completed, and the result is magnificent. Enjoy the rest of the science week, enjoy the food, and I hope you've enjoyed making these little fungi rolls and learning a little bit about yeast.